So hi everybody, I'd like to welcome you to the latest in what's been a fantastic series of leadership interviews around the ILC ClaimsTech 2021 series. And I'm absolutely thrilled to have with me today Ian Hughes, the CEO of Consumer Intelligence. Consumer Intelligence, I'm sure most of you know, one of the world's leading customer insight organizations, and have been a real friend to ILC over the years, and have provided us and our audiences with a really high quality insight around what's changing in the customer world, in customer propositions, and also in the regulatory world relating to customers. So it's great to talk to Ian about all of those things and about how technology will influence what customers will want and need and what they can have. So Ian, great to have you with us. Welcome.
Lovely to be here. Thanks for having me.
So the world is changing, without a doubt. It's changing from a technology perspective. It's changing from a regulatory perspective with the fair value focus, which I think we're going to talk about a little later on. And it's changing in terms of what people expect from any producers of products and solutions. So that must represent an opportunity for brands to meet changing needs. So agile brands, smart companies are going to respond positively to that and do better, surely?
I think so. It's 2 decades this year. In fact, this September, when the conference is on, it's 2 decades of me being in the insurance industry. Prior to that, I was doing other things. And I would say I've seen more change in the last 2 years, but really in the last year, than I've seen probably in the entirety of those last 2 decades. There's an extraordinary amount of pressure coming through to change. And I think that the dynamic that's different now, I mean, whilst there's always been talk about technology and what the technology can do for the industry and how that will change things, what we're seeing now is a consumer-driven, economically driven change that's coming through within the market as well. That's creating, as you say, creating this incredible opportunity to think differently, to do differently, to deliver differently. And I think it's that really I'm sort of looking at it and going, right, the sorts of companies that probably are going to be here in 4 or 5 years' time will be very different. The sorts of things that consumers will be demanding in 4 or 5 years' time from their insurance companies will be very different. Our world has changed, and our ability to respond to that, I think, sits at the core of what's going to make people successful in the future.
So it's interesting. We talk about who's going to be successful in 5 years' time. What do you think would characterize a successful company in 5 years' time in terms of what's motivating them to change their business? So I mean, people are changing for lots of different reasons at the moment in terms of response to technology and proposition. But what's the best motivation for a company to change at the moment, and what's the worst?
Pejorative question, best and worst. So I think the challenge, so there's not just one, right? So there's sort of 3 things. There's quality, service, and price. So, and I always talk way back in the dark recesses of time before I got into insurance that you can have 2 out of those 3, but you can't have all 3. So you can have great quality, great service, but you don't necessarily get a great price. Or you can have a great price and great service, but you won't necessarily get great quality. And I think that the thing that we're seeing more and more into the future is this sort of fragmentation of that. There's going to be, we're looking at probably a really tough economic couple of years. So there'll be lots of people that will be chasing, lots of consumers will be chasing price. And that's creating opportunities for usage-based insurance, for instance, for all sorts of things that sit on that's usage end of the market. It used to be called telematics, but now it's sort of fragmenting into a variety of different areas. And then we're also seeing, a lot of consumers where they're saying, okay, I want better service, or I'm used to getting a certain kind of service in terms of the digital experience that I get. I can send payments. I can't go into a bank to send payments anymore, and those kind of things. I do everything online via an app. Why can't I do my insurance online or via an app and deliver me the service through that? I think the trick here is the companies that can do, I call it the positive, which is customer plus commercial plus compliant. Do those 3 things together positively are the ones that are really going to be successful moving into the future. So do things that are good for customers, that are good commercially, but also compliant. And what's very interesting is how those things, they're not diverging, they're converging together for the future. So I think we're seeing definite change around price, about model with the price, and technologies helping to drive that as well. We're seeing definite uplifts in terms of service and the demand for service. We can talk a little bit about that in a second. And then we're also seeing change in terms of quality as well. So, and I want to be clear, when it comes to an insurance policy, quality is claims. So that's where the rubber hits the road. So really seeing some change in that area as well, both in terms of what companies are delivering, but also in terms of what customers are expecting and what kind of service they're expecting.
And that all makes complete sense, as it always does in you. But the FCA are kind of, they're the arbiters of what we must do. So everything else is kind of, well, we want to do this because we want to be better. But the regulator tells us what we must do.
Yeah.
Non-negotiable. We all have to bake it into our solutions. Why hasn't claims been addressed by the FCA in the general insurance pricing practice, which is kind of the biggest thing on the immediate horizon as far as regulation is concerned?
Yeah. So it has. But I want to be, so that there was really 3 or 4 things that were in the general insurance pricing practices paper, and people have got fixated on the first one, which is the whole thing about renewal pricing. So people go, well, why are you fixing the renewal pricing thing? Why are you regulating that when you haven't fixed the claims side of the equation? Why isn't claims more regulated? And the second thing they got really worked up about was vulnerable customers. The FCA's got really worked up about that. And then the third thing is fair value. And they're saying that companies have to be able to demonstrate they're offering fair value. So let's be really clear. Claims and renewal pricing, not really linked. Claims and vulnerable customers, definitely linked, and we can talk about that in a second. But let's go to the heart of fair value. Claims is fair value. The regulator has spoken and said fair value, giving customers fair value, is what we expect in the future. And your claims are the metrics that they're asking companies to submit. They're telling companies they want to see claims ratios. In fact, they've, in one version of it, they didn't just want to know what the claims ratios have been, they wanted to know what they're going to be. Yeah. So I think the industry needs to, certainly the claims part of the industry needs to understand that it is very firmly within the spotlight of fair value. And when we think about fair value, claims is going to be there. And I think I'm a positive kind of a guy. So I think this is a really positive moment for the claims sector. Yeah. This is the moment where the claims sector shows the value that it has always provided to the insurance industry, which has kind of been left in the limelight by all those people who got worked up about the renewal pricing piece and all the other bits and pieces. Fair value is the thing that's here to stay for the future. They'll fix the renewal pricing thing 2 years from now. We won't even be talking about it. But yeah, fair value, we're still going to be talking about.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, and I think that's something we will definitely want to explore in ILC through the course of this year. I think that should be eye-opening, and that should be a wake-up call for claims leaders across the industry, because there's no doubt. I think they're all going to have to report on their average claims payments. They're all going to have to report on the acceptance rates. They're all going to have to report on their complaints ratios. So as part of fair value, it really is they are going to have skin in the game. There's no two ways about it. Yep. So definitely a big ticket item. And we'll certainly want to explore that at I Love Claims through the year. You mentioned vulnerable customers. That's a really hot topic. I guess the definition of a vulnerable customers also generates a lot of heated debate. What's your take on that?
So I'm going to be relatively controversial, Stu. And
Ian, that's unusual for you. Always positive, but always controversial. Brilliant. Tree.
I think the FCA has slightly. They've said a few things when they talk about vulnerable customers, and I think they're not necessarily internally connected. So my view is that vulnerable. So the definition of vulnerable customer is that it's a customer that's open to review to abuse by a company that has, I guess, sharp practices, right? So that's kind of the definition. And then they go on to say, and there are these 4 categories, and they talk about different categories of people, and people who don't have as good access into information, and so on and so forth. I do worry that when they've thought about vulnerable customers, what they're really thinking about is diversity and equality and all those kind of things. And I actually think that's great. So I don't have a problem with that at all. And I think it's really important that the industry needs to make sure that those people who are not as well informed are not ripped off. I think that's fundamental. However, when you look at people who have stayed with their insurer for 4 years or more and haven't shopped around, which is an outcome metric, right? So FCA is really into outcome metrics. So as you know, we've got like decades worth of data on this subject. So we decided to look at the outcome rather than the input. So your age or your demographic or how much money you earn, those are all input measures. So let's go to the output measure. The output measure is you've been with your insurer for more than 4 years and you don't bother to shop around at your last renewal. What is the number one factor that is a predictor that somebody would be with their insurer for 4 or more years and not shop at the renewal? And the answer is they've had a claim. So it's simple. It's really simple stuff. It's not about your demographic. It's not about how much money you have. It's not about anything else. It's about, did you have a claim? And once you get to that, I think, rather shocking realization about vulnerability, as per the definition at the top, and I haven't read the definition completely, but just go read the paper. You'd see the definitions there. Once you get to that rather shocking understanding that claims is a key predictive factor of what could be seen to be vulnerability, that brings you to 2 outcomes. One, you can make sure that when you can basically go through everybody who's had a claim, are we giving them good value? Are we, are our practices right for them? The second thing it makes you understand is something that the industry has always known, which is that a good claim is a source of a customer that's a loyal and happy customer. Right? They're not staying with the company because they're too stupid to shop around. They're staying with the company because they like the experience that they've had and they want that experience. And I think this year is, I think, now really goes to the very heart of it, right? So I can't overemphasize enough how important this is. The value of the product to that person is in the claims experience. If you change the claims experience, you've changed the value of the product, right? So if you decide that you're going to, let's say you've insourced the claims experience and now you decide I'm going to outsource it all, and you don't put metrics in there about the quality of the claims experience, you've just made vulnerable customers more vulnerable because they're assuming that they're going to get the same quality claims experience as they had before. And by the way, you've changed fair value. So the entirety of the claims industry and the service that it provides to consumers, I said there was 3, right? So there's renewal pricing, nothing to do with that. But when it comes to vulnerable customers, when it comes to fair value, claims is at the very heart of all of that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more, Ian. And we'll loop back around to technology. And there's no doubt that technology can have a hugely positive impact on all 3 of those key outcomes. But again, with the motivation to introduce technology and the motivation for insurers to actually go on a technology-driven journey differs. Just give us a flavour for the different motivations that you've observed, and again, maybe your pejorative question again.
So what's good and what's bad? So I think what's really interesting is, clearly you want to be as efficient and as effective as you can be as an organisation that's delivering claims. I mean, there's no question about that, because that allows you to then drive through efficiencies, which then allows you to, deliver better pricing, but also, has a variety of positive outcomes. So there's no question that that's the thing. I think the problem that I have is where technology is only used as a way of saving money, and that's its real, transformation as a way of saving money, you miss a huge point. And the huge point here is that, I remember the very first time I came and spoke at I Love Claims conference, and the guy with the tractor was outside and all that kind of stuff. At that point in time, I stood up and I said, look, the thing here is that you have to do what you said you were going to do, right? And if technology just helps you do what you said you were going to do, then that's a massive improvement. And I remember speaking in the terms of the home conference. I can't remember, you'll know better than I do, the average number of contractors involved in a home claim is mega.
Yeah.
And if all that technology does is allow you to pull that stuff together so that it feels like a seamless experience to a consumer, then that's amazing for consumers. But guess what? It's also saving a load of money as well on the claims side of things. One of the things that also came out of the fair value work and some of the other things that we've been looking at is that level of experience. So why did customers who claimed stay with their insurer? Because they loved the experience, because the insurer did what they said they were going to do, and because it was simply a lovely experience. So if technology is helping to improve the customer experience, and it's not complicated, it's simple things like, if you said you're going to come at 9 o'clock in the morning, come at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
If you can't come at 9 o'clock in the morning, you're going to come at 11 o'clock. Just let the person know. That's all they want. They don't need rocket science. They don't need a bunch of. It's not mega. It's just do what you said you were going to do. And if you can't do it, let them know. All those things save money, but they also improve the customer experience and make customers more loyal, which means you don't have to recruit as many customers, which saves even more money. So I think for me, technology for the sake of saving money or for the sake of efficiency, effectiveness misses the point. Technology for delivering an optimized customer experience using digital, using whatever the platforms are. I mean, let's face it, if Hermes can send me a text to say that they're going to throw a package over my wall, then why can't my insurance company send me a text to say that they're going to show up at a certain point in time? It does this unacceptably poor for the industry not to be able to do that. So I think for me, the driver should be an optimized customer experience. And then you'll also get efficiency and effectiveness benefits as well. Don't do it for the efficiency, effectiveness, and then get customer experience as a secondary outcome.
Yeah, I think that's the right way around. I've often said, and people have heard me say it before, claims is about two questions asked in the wrong order. Are you covered, and what we're going to do to get you out of the trouble you're in? And more and more, the are you covered bit should be dealt with automatically and digitally and smartly, but should never be questioned, really. It's interesting. I completely buy that. And everybody gets that the claim that's settled quickly is invariably the one that's the most efficiently and effectively settled. So if technology can enable that, that's great. But just reading between the lines of what you're saying, technology is an enabler, but you've got to have the right motivation for doing it. Otherwise, you won't leverage the benefits. So if you're doing it just to cut corners and cut the number of people you need to handle claims, you won't actually get the customer benefits.
And I think increasing. So from a customer's perspective, increasing the simplicity as well.
Yeah.
So not just from the supplier's perspective, from the customer's perspective, the fact that you've got to have 12 different contractors to fix an escape of loss thing, or my car has an accident and one person's going to tow it and another person's going to give me my rental car and another person's going to fix the car. And I don't need to know. I just, my life's too short. I mean, if COVID's taught us nothing else, it's taught us that life's too short, right? And so I don't want to know you've got 12 different suppliers. It's your job to have 12 different suppliers. I need you to catch me when I fall. And that's what I think insurance is here for, is to catch people when they fall.
I think that's a lovely way of putting it. That is a lovely way of putting it, and quite an emotive and vivid way of summing it up. Really powerful. Claims and culture, they are processes, claims essentially, but they're always underpinned by about the culture that drives an organisation and the way an organisation wants to be to its customers. Give us some examples of where you've seen positive cultures drive positive change.
So I think, earlier on when we were talking about the FCI, I said there was three things. Then I said, and then maybe a fourth. I think the fourth really was around the senior manager conduct regime and the need for senior managers, or not the need, but then now the necessity for senior managers to be personally on the line in terms of their careers are on the line. And what's really interesting is it's not just the people working in the business, it's also the non-execs who are chairing the boards and all that. They also have a personal culpability now. So what we're really seeing is the businesses that are driving this because it's in their executive bonus packages. It's in their non-execs briefs. There's the carrot and stick of, it's in the bonus package, but the stick of, and by the way, if you don't do it, the FCA could it's personal for you and the FCA in terms of you being a senior manager within a business. So I think that what we're seeing is there's a real cultural need for businesses to drive that forward. We've been so lucky across the course of the last year, we get to speak to lots of different companies and look at their different cultures. We had on our webinars, we had the claims director from RSA. We also had Mark Evans from DL, all talking about cultures. And there's that. So I remember Mark was talking about the fixer and their thing about being the fixer, and they fix things and make it right again. So I think it's more than just a bunch of process. So everything in business is about people and process. So you've got to get the process right. There's no question at all. But there's a people piece around how you drive that and how you go the extra mile and how you release your people to go the extra mile. And if all that you're really, again, come back to the technology piece, if all the technology thing does is create a straitjacket by which people claims handlers and people working in claims can no longer be human beings because the entire thing's been automated, then that's not going to work for you as an organization. You've got to enable the people. But I think then when you get into the people thing, that whole piece around culture, what are you here for? What's your purpose? What's driving you? What is it? So I talked about RSA and DL, but what does an RSA claims experience look like as separated from a DL claims experience, as separate from an NFU claims experience, as separated from an Aviva, as separated, all the different experiences. What is it? All vanilla? Is everybody has one experience, or does that experience speak to that moment when you fall and I catch you?
Yeah.
That's personal.
Yeah.
If Disney was doing claims, how would Disney do claims? How would you do that? And I think that's that cultural. Well, if Disney was doing it, it would be cultural, right? It would start all the way through the whole organization, and it would be driven as a cultural piece, where it's about how you do it as much as what you do. And I think the people that we're seeing driving some very interesting, so quite successful change within their companies that we then see through the consumer research, getting some very interesting outcomes from a consumer's perspective, are the ones who have looked at not just what they do, but how they do it.
Ian, that's been, as always, hugely illuminating. I think there's stuff for us to pick up on, and I suspect you and I will speak again on fair value for claims. I think there's a piece there for us to perhaps do a separate session on. But a huge amount of food for thought. We'll pick up on some of the threads, I feel sure, but I'm really looking forward to your session on September the 23rd at the ClaimsTech live event, and hearing your ongoing view of all of the stuff that we'll be seeing there through a customer's lens. Ian, thank you.
Do you know what's exciting about that though, Stuart?
Yeah,
we're actually going to be in the same room.
We are actually going to be in the same room. And said no one ever, as far as I was concerned before. So there's a first for us as well. Thank you for that, Ian. You're very kind, and thank you for your time today. That's been absolutely wonderful.
My pleasure.